Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'd like to welcome everyone to today's seminar on doing more by doing less with Microsoft Copilot. I'm Chuck Brown, CEO of Infinity, and I'm going to introduce Ben Brown, one of our solution specialists here at Infinity.
Hey guys, hope everybody's doing well today. Glad we could gather virtually and learn a bit more about AI. This is more of an introductory level demonstration of specifically Microsoft's version of Business AI Copilot. We're pleased to have Andrew with us today. He's an expert in Microsoft who works for TD Synnex. In a moment, you all will receive an email from Kat, our marketing manager, and that will include the $25 gift card to either DoorDash or Uber Eats. So you guys can order yourself some food, whether it's now or later. Yeah, today we are going to be going over both basic overview of what Copilot is, what AI is, some security concerns to contemplate if you are considering deploying AI into your business, as well as use cases to make your life more efficient. I was talking with one of our clients recently who's probably thinking the way most everyone is these days, which is um, a desire to embrace AI not only for talking to Chat GPT here and there, or for personal uses, but within the business to get an edge from a competitive standpoint. I know that there's growing concern, and probably rightly so, about getting left in the dust. Not that robots are going to take over all of our jobs, but that the usefulness of AI to really reduce the amount of time you have to put into certain tasks that are mundane, as well as boost your capabilities with things within your business, whether it's prospecting, engineering work, as a lawyer, sorting through just tons of information. I mean, AI really can catapult you further along in your business if it's done well. Um, I'm going to hand it over to Andrew. If at any time you have questions, we have left the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. You should see a Q&A button you can press. I'll be monitoring that, and I will make sure we get your questions answered. We'd love to help you in any way that we can. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Andrew.
Thanks very much, Ben, and good afternoon, good morning to those of you who are in attendance here today, because it is going to be a discussion, if you want it to be a discussion, or at least a presentation, some instruction with regards to Microsoft 365 Copilot. It is all the rage, and that's because there's so many different AI tools that are in the market right now. There's no shortage of them. And if I use this analogy, you could, in some strange world, go down to a dollar store, buy a dartboard, bring it back, put it on the wall of your office or your home, and then get all of the different names of the various AI tools that are out there today and stick them on this dartboard, and you cover the dartboard because there's that many. But then cover your eyes and take a dart and throw it at the dartboard, and you're going to hit something and you'll say, okay, we're going to use that one. This is what our business is going to be standardized on. We're going to authorize our employees and coworkers to use this particular AI tool. Fantastic. It might even be ChatGPT, because that's the best known of these AI tools, because it's being used in business and for personal leisure, all of that kind of good stuff. AI actually is a good thing. One might say, well, there's the other side of the coin, but you're going to find that with most things. AI is a good thing. However, you do want to give some thought. You absolutely want to be very thoughtful and thorough when it comes to determining which AI tool you're actually going to give your employees permission to use, or your coworkers permission to use. It's one thing to be using AI at home to help you come up with a wedding invitation, help you come up with a party invitation, maybe help you to come up with a speech that you're going to give at your local social organization, in school, different use cases. But for business, for your business, which is the AI tool that you're actually going to trust with your data and information? Different conversation, different perspective, and I'm hoping I'm going to give you some useful information here over the next few moments. And so the agenda looks pretty vague, does it? But actually it's not. We're going to take a look at the compelling reasons why Microsoft 365 Copilot actually deserves your attention for your business. This is not going to be a message about um, bashing other AI tools. You can use whatever you like. This is specifically what's most appropriate and suitable and secure for your business, because they are not all suitable for business. Microsoft 365 Copilot has some compelling reasons that you need to consider. I'm going to summarize Copilot in this one slide. I'll have additional information, but it really comprises the things that you see here. Large language models, LLMs. ChatGPT, right? It's not a bad word. It's very popular, like I said. If you're using something else, maybe Gemini, maybe you're using Bard, maybe you're using Perplexity, and the list goes on. Doesn't matter which one it is. But ChatGPT will be my point of reference because it's best known. That's an LLM. That's a large language model. It's a computer program that learns from a lot of text, like millions, if not billions, of different pieces of text, vectors, lots of it. And it learns from that so that it can understand and create natural language. So if you're using something like ChatGPT and you type in your prompt, and prompt is just a simple way of saying set of instructions, the set of instructions that you give to the technology. We refer to that as a prompt. So you type in your prompt, you hit enter on your keyboard, it goes into the technology. And in the case of a ChatGPT or a Gemini, it's going to scour the entire web, the internet, for relevant information and use that information to construct an answer in natural conversational language that you can understand. That's an LLM. Microsoft 365 Copilot is not an LLM. However, it does use LLMs, plural, and foundational models. So that is one distinction, what makes Microsoft 365 Copilot different from the other technologies. Many of the other technologies are specifically classified or categorized as an LLM. Microsoft 365 Copilot it leverages multiple LLMs and other foundational models. So that's the first thing. That's a part of what Microsoft 365 Copilot is. The next thing is that it's going to make use of your Microsoft data. If you have standardized on Microsoft 365 or even Office 365, your license allows you to use things like Microsoft Teams. It allows you to use things like Microsoft Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and the list continues. The data that you have compiled or created and have access to, Microsoft 365 Copilot will have access to that as well. Now, that might put the fear of something into you because, oh no, it's AI. I don't want it to have access to a whole bunch of things. Hang on, we're going to get to the security aspects of this. And believe it or not, it's not as complex as you might think. But for the purpose of what I'm trying to share with you here, Copilot has access to your company data, whatever you allow it to have access to by default. If you want it to have access to other things that are, let's say, non-Microsoft, you want it to have access to the internet, things like that, you can customize it to do that. Very flexible. Best-in-class data protection, can simplify that in one phrase: enterprise data protection by Microsoft, which means that using this subscription, your chat interactions aren't saved, although if you need those chat interactions to be saved, in other words, if you actually need to have a history because you need to satisfy some type of regulatory requirements or for compliance purposes, you can set it up so that it retains a history of chat interactions. But you can choose not to have that. So if you want chat interactions to be happening, but you don't want those things to be saved, you actually can customize it so that that does not happen. So that's a good thing. You have that flexibility. But that's job one. Chat interactions aren't saved unless you want them to be. The next point is that Microsoft has no visibility to your chat interactions because it's uh, a private interaction. It's within your Microsoft boundary. Your data is your data, and those chat interactions are your data. So no history unless you want there to be. Microsoft has no visibility to your chat interactions. And thirdly, those chat interactions are not used to train the large language models that are external to your business. Remember what I said not too long ago with ChatGPT being an LLM and the other technologies. When you're using those technologies, they train themselves on the information that is pasted into their tools, right? You have a chat box and you type in your prompt and you're waiting for the technology to give you a response to whatever your question is, whatever directions you've given it. That information is retained so that those technologies can learn from it. So when other people around the world ask similar questions where that info would be useful, it's going to learn from that so that the next person and the next people can get even better responses. Now, is that something you've considered when using those technologies for business purposes? A question that you need to give some thought to. So best-in-class data protection, to summarize, your data remains your data, and Microsoft doesn't lay any claim to it. Microsoft 365 apps, the next bullet point, that's easy. It just means that Copilot integrates with your Microsoft 365 apps, which are Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and the other Office applications that we've come to know over the years, dare I say over the decades. And the last point there, Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio is a part of Microsoft 365 Copilot. All right, so what is that? Copilot Studio is a feature set that allows you to create mini copilots. What do I mean by that? So there is a term that you will start to see if you haven't already in related to AI in general called agents. Now within the Microsoft world, they are called Copilot agents, and these are mini copilots. Let me give you this scenario. If we think of a pie, all right, and whatever your favorite pie happens to be, mine is apple. Not too much cinnamon, please, but apple pie, whatever it is, the whole pie represents your data. Microsoft 365 Copilot will reason over that data over the entire pie. When I say reason, it's going to use that data to put together answers to your questions. If you determine within your business that, it might be better if we could have Copilot just to reason over a slice of the pie. So we appreciate that it is going to access all of our data, but maybe the HR department only wants it to look at HR specific information when someone asks an HR question. Rather than have Copilot look at everything, just look at our HR data to provide the answer. That is when you would create a Copilot agent. You need Copilot Studio to create the agent. Those tools are included in Microsoft 365 Copilot. So that info that I've just shared with you there, those 5 points, all contribute to making Microsoft 365 Copilot what it is. The other thing that I want to highlight here, and this now is as technical as I'm going to get. So if you're not an IT person, not a technical person, that's great. I'm with you on that. My background is in sales. It's not on the IT side, but this that I'm going to share with you is important so that as you're having your conversations with Infinity, at least you have a baseline understanding of how this works versus the other technologies, right? So you get a proper 360-degree view. You type in your prompt when you're working with any of these AI tools. You type in, so in this case, you would say, Copilot, do this, or Copilot, do that, or I need information on this, or what do you think of that? You type that in on your keyboard, you hit enter, it goes into the technology. In this case, it goes into the Copilot technology, and it is routed to what we are referring to as pre-processing. Pre-processing involves a semantic index in Microsoft Graph. The semantic index, when you get a subscription, and of course, I'm hopeful you will, but once you get a Microsoft 365 Copilot subscription, one of the earliest things that's going to happen that you're not going to be aware of, it happens behind the scenes with that technology, is the semantic index is going to map out all of your Microsoft data, all of your personal business data and your company data to understand the context and the concepts of that data and how that data relates to you as a user. That's necessary. The more data and information that there is that relates to you in terms of your day-to-day job and responsibilities, the longer it will take. The less data, then of course, the shorter amount of time. So it could take as much as or as little as an hour or in a small business environment, and it could take as much as a week in the grand scheme of an enterprise global organization. But once it's done, it's mapped out that info, it has its understanding from a technical perspective. Then when you start using this and you type in your prompt, it goes for pre-processing. The semantic index is now going to work to decipher and interpret the meaning of your prompt. What in the world are you asking me? What do you need me to do? It gains that understanding, and then the relevant information is retrieved through the Microsoft Graph. The Microsoft Graph, for our purposes today, is the gateway to your Microsoft information. And that's what the circle that you see there is representing. So whatever information that's connected to your Microsoft license, whether it has to do with security or chats and channels, events, etc., calendar, all of that good stuff, files, documents, etc. The retrieved data, so in other words, this is retrieved information based on the understanding and interpretation of your request, your prompt. That retrieved data and your prompt are now sent to the LLM. Remember that? LLMs. And that's where your answer is now constructed in natural conversational language, but it's not quite finished yet. There is another piece that happens. That completed answer now gets sent for post-processing. And post-processing is all about the security. Consider this. You have Microsoft 365 or Office 365. You've been working with it. You've been reading files in Word. You've been creating files in Word. You've been in Excel and PowerPoint and SharePoint and OneDrive. And all of this over time, over years has accumulated. But you have a person or people who are responsible to make sure that data and information stays private, protected, and secure. It's available for employees and coworkers to have access to. And even within your business, there is certain information that is only available to certain people based on their job and their requirements, like a need to know type thing, or that should be the case. But you have a ring of protection around that data. There are policies in place for each user. All of that, those policies are now applied to your answer to make sure that what you're going to see in that answer is nothing that you actually have never had permission to see. When those checks and balances are taken care of, then your answer finally gets returned to you. Took me a few minutes to explain that, but in reality, it's seconds. You don't notice it. But that is what happens in the Microsoft 365 Copilot process versus the process for the other technologies. And the reason is Microsoft 365 Copilot integrates with your Microsoft 365 environment. Those other technologies do not. All right, and so staying on that theme, your data and identities remain secure, protected, and here's the kicker, under your control. If you are copying and pasting info into any of those other AI tools, you're going to get fantastic results because it's AI, right? AI, it doesn't have any favorites. You're using AI, you're going to get great results, but you have no control over what happens to your information while it's out there. 75% of people are already using AI at work. Now, these data points, and it's 3 of hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Microsoft has done a lot of extensive research, and they have commissioned a number of different reports. This info comes from a report, you can see at the bottom there, 2024 Work Trend Index Annual Report, published last year. So it's quite reasonable to expect that these numbers may even be higher. But the point is this, the reason why I wanted to share this, AI exists. The train has left the station and is probably a bullet train, not the average slow train that runs overnight and stops everywhere, right? It's gone. So what is your plan? What is your strategy for your business to ensure that it stays protected, that the investment that you've made to keep your private stuff private remains that way? What is your plan? What is your strategy? How do you intend to leverage the power of AI without torpedoing your business? A very serious question. Shadow AI. You need to be concerned about that. It's always existed, but it's just now got a fresh coat of paint in this era of AI. It involves the use of AI tools that haven't been authorized or approved by an organization's IT department. So if this is a term that you're not familiar with, that's all right. After today, now you are familiar with it. Because if IT has said no to a particular app and employees continue to use it anyway, they are engaging in shadow AI. So these are the things that you need to be aware of. If you know that you have coworkers that are using AI, maybe yourself, that in and of itself isn't a bad thing because it means you recognize that AI is helpful, help to boost your creativity, help to boost your productivity, help you to save time and all kinds of other things. You just need to be aware that not all AI tools can be trusted with your sensitive data and information. Once again, you've invested in making sure that stuff stays private and is only accessible by certain people in the business. You don't want any external people having access to it, then be aware of that. You want to make sure that that stays in place. You have internal confidential data to protect. You've got customer data to protect. You've got partner and supplier data to protect, and other types of data that aren't even here. These are just for the purpose of example. Let's watch this.
Microsoft 365 Copilot is transforming work with the power of generative AI. It's built on Microsoft's comprehensive approach to enterprise-grade security, compliance, privacy, identity, and responsible AI. Copilot automatically inherits your organization's Microsoft 365 security, compliance, and privacy policies, so you know your data is protected and always in your control. It all starts with your Microsoft 365 tenant. Data stored in your tenant is encrypted and only available to the users within that tenant. Your existing Microsoft 365 permissions and policies ensure that data won't leak between users and groups. And Copilot users only have access to data they've been granted permission to see in Microsoft 365 using the same technology customers have relied on for years. Your tenant sits inside the Microsoft 365 service boundary, where Microsoft's commitments to security, compliance, data location, and privacy are upheld. The Copilot large language models, or LLMs, that process your data sit within that same boundary, much like other Microsoft 365 services. Microsoft does not have eyes-on access, which means no one can view your data. Your data is not used to train the LLMs. And our EU customers can be confident that their data is processed within the EU data boundary. Microsoft 365 Copilot, enterprise-grade security and privacy for the era of generative AI.
So here's what, I guess to summarize what I've been saying up until this point, here's what you really need to consider. And I'm going to show you some examples of Copilot in action, right? But to be transparent, it's not unusual for me to hear from businesses and individuals who say, well, the things that I've seen we can do in Copilot, I can do that in ChatGPT or in Gemini or the others. Or, I've done stuff in these tools and I've done them in Copilot and, they seem pretty similar. So like, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? AI, artificial intelligence, and the ability, accessibility of using those tools, it's not a giant gap in terms of functionality. Features is where you might find some distinction for sure. And like I said, I'll show you some examples. I use Copilot all the time. I believe it's better. But really, the biggest differentiator, what you actually need to consider above all else, is while you're using an AI tool or multiple AI tools, and you are welcome to use what you like, but what is it or which tool can you trust with your data? Again, you've made the investment to protect what you have and to stay in control of that. So perhaps you or others in your business, you're working with a sensitive Word document, or it's got sensitive information in it. Or maybe it's an Excel file with lots of numbers, sensitive info once again, because perhaps it's financial records. Maybe you're working with a document having to do with mergers and acquisitions, or who knows. Whatever you deem to be private, you can't let this info out. You've got people working with that. It's protected. So I ask you this question. Why then does it make sense to say it's okay to move from your protected environment? So you copy a section of that info, let's say from Word, you copy and paste it into a ChatGPT because you want to leverage the power of AI. Fantastic. But you're now moving from a private, protected, controlled environment into a public environment where you have no control. Why does that make sense? We work in the same organization, let's say. There's certain info that you are allowed to see, that you have permission to see because of your job and responsibilities. I can't even see it because of the nature of my job and responsibilities, and we're in the same company. Why does it make sense, therefore, for you to be able to copy and paste the info that you have privilege to see into an environment where now anybody can see it? These are questions that you need to ask. And these are questions that you need to be able to answer for your business. While that info is pasted in those other technologies, you're getting and benefiting from the power of AI for sure. But remember, those large language models are training and learning from what you've got pasted in there. So someone else, random person, asks a question that makes that info relevant to their question. Those technologies will incorporate that into the response that it puts together for those people. Those are things that you need to be considering. What if you could take the power of AI and bring that into your protected environment where you remain in control? You get to decide what Copilot can see and have access to, and you get to decide what you don't want Copilot to see or have access to. All of that happens within your Microsoft 365 Copilot environment. And so an assessment, if you've not done an assessment of your environment to make sure that the policies that you have in place are the right policies for each user, to make sure that there are no gaps, I would encourage you to give some thought to doing a risk and compliance assessment or even a Copilot assessment. And these are things that you can discuss with your Infinity representative. Once your security border is secure and tight and all the gaps are closed up and you're able to continue sleeping well at night, here's an example of how you can expect Copilot will work for you.
Microsoft 365 Copilot works with the data security controls you have in place for file access, labeling, classification, and data loss prevention. Mario Rogers works for Violet Martinez, and both are on the same team at Contoso. Mario and Violet are also members in the same group working on Project Falcon. Now we'll start with Violet, who's been working with the procurement and contract management teams to sell their partner ReliCloud 1,500 Mark 8 quadcopters. And you can see the file is labeled highly confidential with restricted access, and it describes all the terms in the purchase agreement. Because Violet has access to the file, she's able to search for and find it in SharePoint and Microsoft365.com. And of course, Violet can also navigate to the file's location in the Agreements folder of the project site to find the purchase agreement. So now let's look at Mario's experience. Even though he's on the same team and working on Project Falcon with Violet, if Mario tries to search for the Contoso purchase agreement, he won't find it. And there are a few purchasing documents that he does find without sensitive information, but not the one that Violet's working on. And if Mario knows the location of the purchase agreement and tries to navigate to it directly, it just appears as an empty folder to him. And when Mario launches Word on the web and creates a blank document, then prompts Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the Contoso purchase agreement as a reference file, because Microsoft 365 Copilot respects the file permissions of its user, Copilot also cannot access the purchase agreement. Now, if we switch back to Violet's screen, because she has permission to access the purchase agreement, she can use Microsoft 365 Copilot to summarize the file. And after a moment, you'll see it created a summary of the purchase agreement, and Violet decides to keep it. Then data security controls for Microsoft Purview discover sensitive information found in the Microsoft 365 Copilot generated content. The document is automatically labeled as highly confidential, and policies are enforced to restrict access to the document.
So hopefully that was useful, but I'll just break it down even further. Boil it down to the bare minimums. The way that Microsoft 365 Copilot works is subject to what the user is allowed to have access to. Microsoft 365 Copilot, the subscription, is not going to circumvent any policies or protections that you have in place for your business today. It's not going to add anything to it. It's not going to remove or replace anything. If I, as a user of Microsoft 365 Copilot, have access to information over here, but so IT has said, you have access to these files and these documents over here, and this is what you get to see because your job requires you to have access to this. Then IT will also say, but we have put some policies in place that say you are restricted from seeing this info over here because it's not relevant to your job or your responsibilities. So this you can see, this you cannot. When I get a Microsoft 365 Copilot subscription, it will work with this information because I have access to this information. There are policies that give me access to this info, but this info here, I am restricted from seeing and having access to. Microsoft 365 Copilot will also be restricted from having access or visibility to this information. It actually comes down to being as simple as that. There are no security controls that come with a Microsoft 365 Copilot subscription because it's going to, as you heard already, is going to inherit all of the existing security, privacy, identity, and compliance policies that are already in place. 3 essentials for Microsoft 365 Copilot success: leadership, business scenarios, and technical readiness. 2 of these are about the user enablement and user experience, right? Starting with leadership, it needs to be a top-down discussion. And I would suggest that where leadership is concerned, the security message should be the leading conversation. All of the other benefits and features and talk about that relevant because, all right, so if we get Copilot, can we do this in Outlook? Can we do that in Excel? Relevant conversation, you need to have it. But let's not lose sight of the fact that from a leadership perspective, once again, that individual is probably the one person who is going to always be engaged with sensitive, confidential, perhaps restricted type information. That person or those individuals are going to want to know that we're rolling something out here that is actually going to complement or work within the security we already have. And it's not going to create a hole or an opening for bad actors to get in. So top-down sponsorship, best practice form of decision-making group. Business scenarios, look for users or identify users based on their role and responsibilities. And if there are repetitive tasks that they would be more than willing to offload onto AI. That could be from an HR perspective, finance, maybe salespeople, marketing, right? What's unique to them, or what is it about their particular day-to-day activities where they're willing to identify certain things that, hey, if I could get AI or Copilot to do these things, that would help me out tremendously. And then technical readiness goes without saying. The very first bullet point, actually, if it were the only bullet point, would still be very relevant, and that is protect your data infrastructure. All right, so we have time left. That was the plan. Let me show you some examples of Copilot in action. Actually, before I get that, any questions or comments, or maybe if you heard something that I shared with you that you disagree with or agree with, it'd be great to hear from you. Anyone have any feedback at this time? Nope. Okay, I will keep moving forward, but remember, if you'd like to ask a question, you can type that out, and Ben has got an eagle eye on that stuff. So first example then is, I'm trying to decide here. Let me just stop. No, I won't stop sharing here. Let me open up Outlook. So the first example, I have a couple of recorded examples, but let me show you a live example of Outlook. You need to have a Microsoft 365 Copilot subscription. This is my actual production version of Copilot in Outlook. And you can see in the upper right-hand corner, I have a Copilot button. And when I click on that, it opens a Copilot sidecar. And so down at the very bottom right-hand corner is the chat window where I can start typing my prompt. And as you can see, describe what you'd like to do. So I'm going to close this for now. Come back to that later. This is a random email that I created with one of my coworkers. And it's for the purpose of this example. I'm going to show you how you can use Copilot to summarize an email. And so let me show you this example. And before you start to put together your pushback to say that, well, we can summarize an email using the other AI tools. Yes, you can. The concern there is not whether the other AI tools can summarize an email, because here's what you would have to do. You would copy and paste that email content into those other tools, and then you say, summarize this for me, and it will summarize it for you. And you get what you need from it, and maybe you would then copy and paste that back into Outlook again, or into Word, or wherever. But if that email has confidential information in it, I would suggest to you that it is not sustainable to continue copying and pasting that confidential information into those other tools, because once again, that's a public arena. You are relinquishing control of the protections that you had in place for that content, and you're putting your business at risk over the long term, right? It only takes one occasion for a bad actor to get access to that, and then terrible things can happen. Here is this email in Outlook that I have. Microsoft Defender for Business. It's a Microsoft product. We won't focus on that, but I just pasted some information there. Sent it to a coworker. His name is Mo, and he replied with some feedback. And then I responded to say, great, thanks very much. Let me share this with another coworker. Her name is Rome, and she responded with some feedback. And it's just to extend the length of this email message, and then it finishes here. I'm now going to click on the Summary by Copilot button just above. Hopefully you can see this here, Summary by Copilot. When I click on it, Copilot is going to summarize that entire email thread. And it provides me with a 4-line summary that I hope you can see here. So I asked Mo for feedback, and then Mo suggested or made some suggestions. My other coworker, Rome, agreed with those suggestions. And then finally, I acknowledged the feedback and said that mentioned getting Copilot to do a revision. Anyway, here's the application for this. First of all, if you're a person or you have people in your business who are swamped by email on a daily basis, perhaps you're a magnet for email because your role and responsibility is one that includes maybe giving approvals, right? People have to go through you to get approvals to proceed with a project or a purchase or you name it. Maybe you're an individual who, if you decide to be away for an extended 3-day weekend, you're in for some severe suffering when you come back because instead of having 100 email waiting for you, now you've got 200 or 300, but you've got to get through them all while still attending to whatever other activities you are responsible for. So how long does it take you typically to get through your inbox and to clear things out? The Summary by Copilot feature allows you to get a summary. You review the summary, and now you get to decide, all right, do I need to attend to this email now, or can I defer until later? If you are a part of this email thread from the very beginning, maybe you're up to date and you don't need to review or get a summary. But if you were added to the email partway through, it would be helpful to know how this even started. The Summary by Copilot will help you with that as well. This is a feature that will allow you to prioritize your inbox. However fast you may feel you are when it comes to prioritizing your inbox, this is going to do it for you a lot more quickly. And you might respond to say, well, it's only a few seconds. What's a few seconds? A few seconds for one email, you're right. It's not substantive. But a few seconds over multiple emails over the course of a day, that could turn into a minute or two. If you multiply that over the course of a week, once again, if you're a person who drowns in email on a daily basis, you could potentially be looking at saving several minutes. I mean, maybe as much as 15, maybe half an hour over the course of the week. And I think that would be a noticeable saving for the average person. And so that's what the Summary by Copilot feature is all about. Let me show you another example, because I guess the most obvious question would be, can we use this to write an email? So let me just find a prompt here to save some time. And let's take a look at how Copilot works in Outlook to draft or create an email. So I'm clicking on the new email button up here, and the Copilot button is still there. Also in the body of the email, you can see where it says draft with Copilot. Using either of them will produce this, which is the prompt window. Remember when I clicked on the button over here, opened the sidecar in the lower right-hand corner, there's a prompt window there. But then there's also the one that I just clicked on back at the top here, which because I opened the sidecar, it disappeared. So I want to use the one in the email itself. All right, so here we are, draft with Copilot. Let me put some space. Oh, I just got rid of it again. All right, third time is a charm. Here we are. So what do you want this email to say? Well, Copilot, I am swamped. I'm doing lots of stuff. So draft an email to introduce our new product manager to the sales team. Our new product manager from, I don't know, California to the sales team. And so Copilot is going to write that. And for the few seconds this takes, maybe it allows me to close a folder, open something else, scan some other information, especially if you are a person who multitasks and you can't exist unless you're multitasking, like focusing on one thing just isn't you. This is a feature that I think you'll find to be quite valuable because look, the email is done. Hi, team. I hope this email finds you well and in great spirits. I'm excited to introduce our new product manager who has recently joined us all the way from sunny California. Um, and on it goes. I didn't really provide Copilot with any further info. Actually, the length of this email is typically way longer than I would ever um, produce. I like stuff to be just short and straightforward to the point. When you scroll down to the bottom, you have options. So as the user, you can edit this yourself. One of the best use cases for Copilot, whether it's in Outlook or any of the other tools, is for a first draft. And I use Copilot to create a first draft of an email for me. So now that allows me to see, okay, at least I now have call it a template that I can work with, and I'll do the remaining edits. Or as you become more comfortable and trusting of Copilot, you can use some of the prompts down below, make it shorter, for example. So let me click on that, Copilot's thinking, and let's see. So it's been shortened. I can still say make it even more short, shorter. But that's an example. I can add here, adjust tone or length. I can say the new product manager's name is Tom Smith, and he has, well, I don't know if anyone really cares about that, but anyway. Now Copilot's going to rewrite this, and there we are. I hope this email finds you well. New product manager from California, Tom Smith. Blah, 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 blah. Is there anything in here about, I don't see anything here about the master's degree, but which is fine. I didn't think it was really necessary anyway. Okay, there's 3 versions. Copilot did not delete the previous 2 because that's not Copilot's job. Copilot has done what I've asked, and now I can look back at the previous 2 versions to see which one I prefer. Do I prefer this lengthy one, or go to 2 of 3? Do I prefer this one, or do I prefer the third one? Whichever I like. Let's say it's the third one, and now here you can see below, keep it. The highlight removes or is removed, and I can do some final touches here, right? I mean, this is like a single run-on paragraph. I prefer some formatting, so I hope this email finds you well, Tom Smith, blah, blah, blah. And I can continue that way. And then when I'm happy with the result, not when Copilot is happy with the result, when I am happy with the result, I can put in the appropriate emails, determine who I want to send this to, add a subject line, and then hit send. Copilot in Outlook does not send any emails. This is a Copilot. It is not an autopilot. You're still the captain of the ship. What Copilot produces requires your evaluation and review to make sure that it is to your liking. And that is the case using Outlook. That is the case using any of the other tools and features. Let me show you another example of Copilot in action in Excel.
Copilot in Excel makes anyone a data analyst. Say you want to understand annual revenue trends, how each product is selling, which categories are performing best, and what's driving sales. To do that, you need to bring together data on product sales, pricing, and customer feedback. First, you import your data sources. Now you have a workbook with all the raw data you need in one place, and you can use Copilot to shape and analyze the numbers. Let's start by figuring out which category of your business is driving the most revenue. You know how to calculate that, but this sheet has 3 years of sales data, with thousands of rows showing sales by product by month. So while it's a routine task, this much data can be unwieldy. You can ask Copilot to quickly calculate monthly revenue by product. It knows how to do that, and which data to reference across tabs. Copilot creates a plan for how it will run those numbers, executes that plan, showing its work as it goes, and prompts you to ask questions or iterate on the solution it reached. It looks great, so you're ready to add that column to your spreadsheet. Now a new ask has come in, and you need to understand how each product category is performing and ensure that you are selling at least 100K in product in each category per month. Let's start by comparing sales by category. You ask Copilot to create a simple bar chart so you can quickly see which product categories are selling the best. And with conditional formatting, it highlights the product lines that aren't meeting the $100,000 minimum threshold, so you know where to focus. Now that we know which products aren't selling well, let's dig a little deeper and see what we can learn from the customer feedback. Copilot in Excel can now reason over text, like this raw customer data. Copilot analyzes all the customer feedback from the past quarter and surfaces the top 3 concerns. It looks like charging speed might be an emerging issue. Let's ask Copilot to highlight customer reviews that mention charging speed. Now, with the help of Copilot, you've taken a complex, disparate data set and quickly analyzed it, giving you a full picture of your revenue trends that you can bring to the upcoming business review.
So I hope that was helpful as well, give you an idea of how you can use Excel. And I think I've got time just for one more example before I turn things back over. Let me just get out of this and open up my subscription once again. So with the subscription, right, you get Microsoft Teams. And in Teams, there is something called Copilot Chat, which you can access in other places as well. Copilot Chat actually works across all of your Microsoft 365 apps. So it's not just specific to Word or Outlook. It's not just specific to Excel. So here's an example of how you could use Copilot Chat. I find it's a great place to actually start before I narrow things down to working in a particular application. This is probably the feature that I use the most. So let me just paste a prompt in here. I'm down at the bottom of your screen. Give me a very simple and easy example ROI, return on investment scenario to reflect potential cost savings. Create a scenario based on the following. Consider if 10 licenses are purchased at $360 per year per employee. Estimated time saved per employee is, let's say, about an hour a week, so 4 hours a month, based on user feedback and studies conducted by Microsoft and independent research firms, which they have done. Also assume the average annual cost per employee, including salary, overhead, et cetera, is about 70K. This is a prompt that you might be interested in using, but it certainly gives you an example that prompts don't have to be short. They can have lots of information as long as you're very clear and detailed about it. I will also say that when it comes to prompting, it does take practice because if one type of verbiage doesn't work, then you want to refine and maybe change a word or two in that prompt so that you get the desired result. And when you do get the desired result, then save that prompt so you don't have to go through the headache of trying to figure out how to word things. All right, so I'm going to hit send here and let's see what Copilot is going to produce. All right, so it's done. Let's just take a quick look at this. Sure, let's break down a simple ROI scenario based on your criteria. Number of licenses, 10. Cost per license is that, MSRP, annual cost. And so this is all the info that I provided to Copilot under scenario. Calculation of time savings, based on $70,000 per year. Annual cost savings for 10 employees, then roughly what? What we see there, 16,000. ROI calculation, total annual cost savings is that. ROI, therefore, is about 348%. Summary, by purchasing 10 licenses, the company can save approximately 16,000, et cetera, ad nauseum, ad infinitum. I hope this is useful. And remember, I also asked for references. Oh, yes. And Copilot provided me with references. The importance of references is that you are not obligated to trust what Copilot says out of the gate. That is a process, right? When you meet a new person, are they a friend right away? Not necessarily. Over a process or over a series of engagements where you're out playing golf or go bowling or doing different things together, you build that trust. Likewise, the case with Microsoft 365 Copilot. All right. So let me turn this back over to Chuck and or Ben, and if there's any questions or comments, let me know. But I hope this was a good use of everyone's time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andrew. Everyone who joined, we appreciate you joining today. We hope you found this useful. We will be following up over email with just some more food for thought. And I know we've got a mixture of those that are current clients and are not clients. I just want to say Chuck and I are happy to, if you guys want to book any time with us to discuss how you're currently using AI in your business, or really just kind of dig in and see how it could be useful for you in your workflow personally. We'd be happy to do that. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining.